Canadians sent a clear message that they need to see improvements in their affordability. We promised a middle-class tax cut leading to over $800 of savings for two-income households. We're acting today on that. We're acting on affordability as we look to build out this economy. It's my pleasure on behalf of the Cabinet to sign this order to deliver that tax cut.
Prime Minister Mark Carney setting a July 1st deadline to lower income taxes in this country, his first move since winning the election 2 weeks ago. And as we heard in our exclusive sit-down with the Prime Minister on this program yesterday, he insists he wants to move quickly on other platform promises as well. What are opposition parties planning to support or oppose? With me now to answer that question is Ontario Conservative MP John Brassard. Hi, Mr. Brassard. It's good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Vashti, good to be with you. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person.
No worries. Hopefully when the House resumes, we'll be able to see you. I wanted to start off on the question of the middle-class tax cut that the Liberals promised during the campaign. Your party, as I noted to the minister a few minutes ago, also proposed a tax cut. It was actually bigger in size, but similar in form. Is this something that your party will support when it makes its way, into the Parliament?
Well, we're going to have to see what's in the Ways and Means motion, Vasi, which the Finance Minister indicated today is the manner in which he's going to be proposing this tax cut. If it is indicative of what the Prime Minister has said and what the Finance Minister has said, we'll have to look at it. You know, Ways and Means motion can have many things, could have poison pills in there that causes the opposition to question the intent of the government. A couple of other affordability measures that we'd like to see, obviously an indication that the consumer carbon tax and the industrial carbon tax will be scrapped. We haven't seen that at this point. The capital gains tax is still an issue for many people. I know the government has said that they're not going to increase the capital gains tax, but that's something that I'd like to see if and when this Ways and Means motion is put before Parliament.
Are there negotiations underway between your party and the Liberals to work and move forward on some of what you just laid out? Because I think what you did just lay out are areas where both parties had come to agreement from a policy perspective.
Yeah, there's no question that affordability was the top issue coming out of this election. I'm not aware of any discussions between the Liberals, the new finance minister, or anyone else within our party as to whether we're going to support the measures that they have indicated that they're going to introduce into Parliament. But affordability is the top issue. Housing affordability, housing attainability, all of those are issues that we can universally agree on. We have to make sure, again, that whatever is indicated in the Ways and Means motion is indicative of what the finance minister just said. If it is there, then I see no reason why not to support it. But if they put some poison bill or they don't include some of the other measures that I spoke about, particularly the consumer and industrial carbon tax, you know, that may be subject to negotiation between the parties as we move forward. But affordability is the top issue. And of course, we heard today that there's not going to be a budget, Vashi, until the fall, which means that Parliament will have not had a budget since the fall economic statement. And that's a critical element to any discussions that go forward.
What do you mean by critical element? Like you'd like to see one before you can advance discussions on other things around affordability?
Well, the Prime Minister said, he said for several years, and he said throughout the course of the campaign that, you know, plan beats no plan. We want to see the plan. You'll recall back in the fall when they introduced the fall economic statement, it was a bit of a fiasco. The finance minister didn't even present it. It was just tabled in Parliament. There was no debate. There was nothing on the fall economic statement. Then they prorogue Parliament. Typically, as is convention around Parliament, April is budget time. By proroguing Parliament, we weren't able to see a budget. So we need to see a plan. We need to see some transparency on what the government is going to do to spend the money. Even during the campaign, for example, the Prime Minister indicated that there's going to be $200 billion in more spending that's going to be initiated by the government. Where's that spending going to go? If we don't have a plan or any transparency on what a budget is going to look like, then it's going to be awfully difficult for parliamentarians and Canadians, for that matter, to figure out where this government is going to spend their money. We saw, again, in the fall economic statement, over $60 billion in deficits. We've seen the debt increase to $1.4 trillion. We need to know what the government's going to do to bring that down, or if they're going to increase it, how they're going to increase it. And you made a very important point to the finance minister. And yes, we're going back for a month, but they have the power and the ability to extend the session of Parliament. And I can tell you, based on the indicators that we have, that we would be willing to work right through the summer if we had to pass a budget and make sure that Canadians are aware of just what the government's spending plans are.
His point in response to the questions that I put to him, to the finance minister, was that there is a certain level of uncertainty right now that would make it more difficult to chart out as transparent a path as they have promised, and they feel by the fall there might be some more predictability imparted. And I would note that your party, in coming up with its own platform during the election campaign, also did not include the economic impact or potential economic impact of the trade war. So you seem to concede as a party in the election that that was, unpredictable as well. Does it not make some sense that they would wait until they have a bit more certainty before laying things out for Canadians?
Well, I think the indicators are, based on what President Trump has stated, is we're in a place right now where we're understanding in real time what the impacts of those tariffs are having. And so if the government isn't preparing with an economic plan to deal with this, I believe they have to be transparent with Canadians and say, okay, well, look, we know this is happening. This is how we're going to spend our money. They have the opportunity, as I said earlier, to extend into the summer to develop a budget and a plan that can be approved or not approved by Parliament, as long as, we have the voices of the elected officials to work with the government on that plan. So, we know where things are at right now. We know that there are threats to the auto sector, for example. We're certainly seeing it locally in my region with Honda, and there are other threats that are happening. And so the government is aware of these threats. And so it's prudent upon them, not just from a transparency and accountability standpoint, but also to lay a plan out for Canadians, what exactly they're going to do to mitigate the impact of these tariffs. And they can only do that through a budget. We're going to have to wait a year, apparently, for a budget to be put before Parliament. They have the opportunity, if they wanted to extend the timeline of Parliament, to extend beyond the June final sitting of the House. We'll work into July or August if we have to, but we need to know from a transparency standpoint how the government's going to deal with this and where the money's going to come from.
And I guess I would just respectfully, again, push back and challenge you, Mr. Brassard, because your party could not come up with concrete numbers to assess the impact of the trade war. So you just didn't include it in your costing. You did bake in $20 billion of revenue from counter tariffs. The same thing the Liberals did. They weren't able to include that assessment either. Is it not possible that information is just not reliable? So what is the value of a budget and a plan you put forward that you can't adhere to because of the level of uncertainty that your party's own platform lays bare? Well,
look, Vashi, budgets can be dynamic. There can be additional updates. We haven't had a budget since the fall economic statement, or an indication of budget since last year. We were supposed to have one in April. If the government wanted to, they could provide an interim budget right now based on the impact and implications of any tariffs that have been levied, the impact on certain sectors of our economy, how they're going to plan to deal with that. They can do that. And then if they wanted to, they can update that plan in the fall economic statement, which is only 5 months away, typically, when that would be issued. So I don't see any excuse for not implementing a budget right now, particularly when we've seen the level of deficits, the level of debt increase the way it has, how the government is going to pare down that debt and that deficit. Where is this extra $200 billion coming from? What are they going to do regarding the increase in the public service? What are they going to do in terms of the policy agendas to deal with the affordability issues of Canadians, in particular housing for young people? I know you talked to the finance minister about that just before. These are all issues in the absence of any budget that we were supposed to have in April that need to be addressed now, and the budget is dynamic. It can be readjusted if it has to during the fall economic statement, but we have to know not just as parliamentarians, but Canadians have to know where the money is and how they're going to spend it, and how much more are they going to spend to deal with the crisis that we're dealing with right now, not just as it relates to tariffs, but as it relates to housing, as it relates to affordability, as it relates to the crime that's pervading our street. All of those issues need to be addressed in a budget because, you know, going back on the words of the Prime Minister, you know, we need a plan. The Prime Minister has always said for the last 5 years, he said during the election campaign that we need a plan. And performative little things that he, you know, channeling his inner Trump by signing documents isn't a plan. We need to see the plan and the budget going forward.
Just very quickly, I have time for one last question. I would point out that your party also did not have a path laid out to balance the budget, that there were deficits in your plan as well, not at the size of the at the Liberals, but there were deficits there as well. And I just want to be clear for Canadians, because if they are listening tonight and they are counting on this promised tax cut, your support of that, and I totally take the point that it will, you know, the devil could be in the details, so we'll wait to see the ways and means. But in principle, you don't need to see a budget before supporting something like a tax cut. To be clear, like, the Conservatives will not stand in the way, if it is on the face of it what the Prime Minister is promising, of that going through just because there isn't a budget, will you?
Well, to address the affordability issue that Canadians are having, any tax cut is going to help. So I can't say with any certainty, and I hope you can appreciate this, and I hope anybody watching can appreciate this, that in the absence of seeing what the motion says, because look, I've been here almost 10 years. I've seen poison pills by this government put into motions to specifically not allow the opposition parties to support it. If on the surface it's a tax cut that addresses affordability issues in a real and substantive way, that could include, in my opinion, or should include, in my opinion, the consumer carbon tax, a removal of that, the legislation, the industrial carbon tax, paying businesses back what they're owed with respect to the carbon tax rebate, and an indication of the capital gains being kept at 50%. Those are all things that of course, you know, given the backdrop of the affordability situation that's happening in this country, I mean, we ran on a platform that would include many of those things. And so I would say that, you know, on the face of it, if it's an indication of what the government is saying, without that poison pill, without trying to embarrass the opposition, and in fact, really working towards making life affordable for Canadians, then it would be foolish for me as an MP and foolish for anybody else not to support that. But again, the devil is in the details here, and so I'd have to see that motion before I can commit to anything at this point. I think that's just prudent on our part.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Mr. Brassard, a pleasure. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Vashi. Good to see you.